I'd like to call this meeting of the, a special meeting of the Placer County Parks Commission to order. At this time, we'd like to start with a flag salute. Jeremy?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jeremy. Tracy, would you do a roll call, please?
Here.
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 Okay. We have the agenda in front of you. If you'll review that quickly, please. And then we will need a motion to accept it.
I'll move we approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, okay, it carries. I do not see minutes of the past meeting, so we will forego that and move on to public comment. During this item, the public may address the commission on items that are not on the agenda. The public comment period is limited to 15 minutes, so please limit comments to 3 minutes per person. If all comments cannot be heard within a 15-minute time limit, the public comment period will be taken up at the end of the regular meeting. The commission is not permitted to take any action on items addressed under this item. We can take notes, but we can't take action. All right. At this time, is there any public comments? Yes, ma'am. Would you come?
This is a special meeting.
There are some items that need to go to the Board of Supervisors, and that's why it's a special meeting. And
What's the rush? Go to the Board of
I'm not sure. We'll discuss that when we get to it. But there are 4 items, and they have to do with different areas in the county. All right. Are there anybody online with their hand raised? Okay, I see none. If there's no other comments, then we will move on. At this time, I'd like to have the report from the administrator.
All right, Andy Fisher, County Parks Administrator, for the report. The items that I had, I'm going to turn over to Dan, if he'd be so kind. I wanted to talk about some promotions that we've just had and some folks that have been on our extra help roster doing great work that just got on full time. So Dan, if you're willing to just give a shout out to those folks.
Good evening, Commissioners, Chairman Anderson. We've had a few retirees, so a couple of our guys that were around, one of them was just hit 30 years recently, and then the other one was 20 years. They had retired, and that gave us the ability to bring on a couple new staff members. So we also did some shuffling, and for the first time since probably 2007, we're actually fully staffed right now. Which is a big blessing because we're taking on a lot of new parks. Some of them you've been out to tour. Liam and Ryan, and then Brian also. So I now have, I think, 3 Ryans on the crew. Makes it interesting, but nevertheless, we have a really good crew. A couple of them come with some great construction experience and another really good tree guy. So that's always a blessing when we're doing so much fuels work. But yeah, I'd like for some time for the commission to be able to meet the staff. You know, we talk so much about parks being facilities and trails and things like that, but parks are also the people. Probably closer to me is the people, right? Not just the community, but the people that take care of the parks for the community. So I just want to let you know, like I said, Liam, Ryan, and Brian, they're new guys on my crew, and hopefully we'll get an opportunity to introduce you to some of them soon. I think that's it, Andy.
Yes, thank you. And that's all I had for an administrator report.
Okay, thank you. We want to talk about the, move on to the park dedication fees and the fund analysis report?
Yes. So this report you should have in your packet, the update, the September update of our park dedication fee reports. Just a couple of areas that I would like to draw your attention to, 3 precisely. Area number 5, Meadow Vista, Auburn. So while it continues to have a pace of fees coming into that area, this month's report shows the subtraction of $275,000 that was approved by the board several months ago for Twilight Ride, the Hidden Falls construction project, and then area number 6, City of Lincoln, also shows the reduction of $200,000 from that account. So what's shown in there, $565,000 remaining in area 5, $254 in area 6 is actual amounts with everything that's been approved subtracted out. So that's all uncommitted fund balance that's left. The other one I just wanted to draw your attention to was the Granite Bay area number 10. You had made a recommendation, your commission, probably earlier this year, maybe the end of last year, for $1 million or just under, to go to the Eureka School District for reconditioning and expansion of their fields at Cabot School off of Auburn Folsom Road. That got a little hung up over the summer, got hung up waiting for some environmental documentation. We believe we're pretty close to being ready to take that ahead to the board within the next month or two and get that funding underway, get that project underway. So I'll turn it back to the chair for any questions on those or any other park fee areas.
Any questions from the commission? Any questions from the audience? Seeing none, we'll move on. Do you have anything else to add to that report, Andy?
That's all.
Okay. Moving on, there are no information items, so we'll move directly to the action items. The first one is the Martis Valley Trail, and we are looking at for a recommendation on this one after we hear the report.
Thank you. Again, Andy Fisher introducing, and I would like to introduce Eric Martin, who is online, and I'll turn it to Eric in a little bit to talk about the details of this exciting project. Eric is the Public Works Director of the North Star Community Service District. Your commission is very familiar with the Martis Valley Trail. We began construction on the trail. We began acquisition of easements on the trail almost 20 years ago. Construction began over 10 years ago. And we have completed construction of 4.06 miles of paved trail from the town of Truckee, which is the dotted line, Nevada County and the town of Truckee, the dotted line at the very top of that map, through Martis Valley, through Corps of Engineer property, and up to the roundabout at the intersection of North Star Drive and Highway 267, headed over to Kings Beach. Very successful project. I want to shout out to North Star Community Service District, who has taken the lead and been willing to move the environmental document forward to be in a construction management role on all but one of the sections that we've built so far. Some of you were at the grand opening that we held a couple of years ago for the completion of the section through the valley to the roundabout. And we also, if you recall, in September took a look at some of what was going on in the new section, which the subject for tonight is the green section, the next section to be built, which we refer to as Section 3F, going from the roundabout all the way up to North Star Village. So once that's complete, total is 6.04 miles from Truckee to North Star. You've now completed off-highway, separated, paved Class 1 trail from the housing center in Truckee to the employment center in North Star. One of the most popular recreation destinations during the wintertime. It tends to thaw out quicker than most of the rest of Truckee. Heavily used, heavily loved. And so we've got one more section to be built. Eric and his team put the section out to bid earlier this year with an engineer's estimate. Eric, you can correct me, somewhere around 3.2 million. Bids came back at 4.8 million. Those kind of wild bids that we've seen all over the place seem to finally have afflicted this project. All the other bids had come in right on estimate. This one came in about $1.7 million over. So in short, Eric, I'll let you explain a little bit, but we've done some value engineering. What are some of the cost drivers in that project? And would like to get back out to bid. It's a great project. It's shovel-ready. And so North Star has applied for tranche and occupancy tax for the majority of the funding to make up that funding gap, and has asked us, your commission, to make a recommendation and the board to appropriate $400,000 of Area 1 park dedication fees. With that, Eric, if I could turn that over to you to explain some of the ins and outs and particulars of the project and maybe schedule and anything I missed, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Andy, and thank you, Commission, for having me here tonight. I'm Eric Martin, Director of Public Works up in the North Star Community Services District. You covered it well. We've got a 10-mile trail in its entirety once we get to the finish line. Of course, that segment 3F in green right there is the discussion topic of today. It's about 1.5 miles. It's a beautiful segment. It goes from the parking lots there, the Castle Peak parking lots, to the North Star Village. It has at least 3 creek crossings with another seep crossing through the forest. That's a wooded portion of trail through there. A little more difficult than the Valley Trail to construct, a little easier to permit. Thankfully, it's not on Army Corps land. And yes, the price came in higher, approximately $1.7 million higher. We've gone back to our designer, Auerbach Engineering. They've got a new estimate out. It takes into account the cost there that we received in bids in May. In May, the project was shovel ready. If we had come in as we had hoped with the bid, we would have gone to construction right away. Now we're trying to garner some more funding. Yes, NTCA, we have a grant into them for the full project amount, but really to make it so that committee is willing to approve, we're hoping to bring some funding to the table here today from your group. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about the project specifically, other than Vail is very excited, of course. They haven't brought any money to the table. However, they are offering the land. Yeah, we're happy and ready to go as soon as the funding is available. I will bid this over the winter, hopefully, if funding gets available, and we will break ground on May 1st.
Any questions from the commission? Eric? At this time, I'd like to open it up to the community. If anybody in the audience has any comments that they would like to direct either to Andy or to Eric. All right, seeing none, I will close the comment period. Any online? Okay, comment period for that will be closed. Do we have a motion, please? Okay.
For the supervisor to approve appropriation of park dedication fees to the North Star Community Services District from Recreation Area Number 1, North Tahoe and Martis Valley, in amount of $400,000 for the construction of the Martis Valley Trail Phase 3F project.
Okay. There's been a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Dave Tooker, seconded. And Tracy, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner McCollum.
Aye.
Commissioner Cap.
Aye.
Okay. We are going to move on to the next subject, which is B, the Hidden Falls Regional Parks Trail Expansion Project. And the first item is recommendation approving the name of the Big Hill Preserve. So, Andy, do you have this one?
I do. I'm gonna take this one. So let me begin with an introduction of why we're here tonight and an introduction to the project. In March of 2021, the Board of Supervisors approved the Hidden Falls Regional Park Trails Expansion Project, which expanded from the area that's open today, which is most of the tan area to the bottom of the screen. That shape should look familiar, 1,200 acres of Hidden Falls Regional Park. It's with 30 miles of trail on it. So the part to the far left, right off Garden Bar, is not open to the public yet. That would be a future project. It's not the subject of tonight. We have no real plans right now to open that entrance off a garden bar, but we will, the subject for tonight is to look at some of the preliminary things that within our use permit and that need to be done before the opening. Oh, go ahead. Before the opening of the Twilight Ride entrance. So the approval of the project included we call the Taylor property, Katamian property, and to the right over here, the 50-acre Twilight Ride property, along with 148 acres that was purchased by Placer County that we call the Roar property. And this would be the first phase of expansion property that opens, and it's really the subject of what we're here for tonight. Now, future, part of the 2021 approval also approved us to open up this green area up to the top that we have not started seeking funding for, we have not made plans for, so that is a future project. So we're really here to talk about the things that we need to do before the Twilight Ride and that area is open. The Twilight Ride project is under construction. The parking lot is now paved, the restroom is set. There is utility work, there's cleanup work, there's enough work to be done on this project between now and mid-2025. That's when we now expect to open the park, mid-2025. We also did just go out to bid on a trail, a connectivity trail between Hidden Falls and the new property, the blue property. The Placer Land Trust had approached us several months ago and said, we think it would be a better situation all around for both a user and a management perspective if you could complete a trail in between the new property and the old property. The blue property itself would have about, I think, Lisa, 8 miles of trail on it. Not a huge amount of trail, so if it could all be connected up, then we would have over 40 miles of trail that could be used from either one of the new trailheads off of Mears, the existing, or the Twilight Ride trailhead. So that's what we set out to do. We did let a bid out for that trail construction contract. The board appropriated $650,000 to build that trail. We let it out to bid. We received bids. The low bid was $725,000. So there is a gap that we are working now with CEO's office and looking for additional funding to see if we can award that bid and move forward with that trail construction project. But for tonight, there are several items we wanted to bring forward, things that do need to be done. Question was asked, why is there a rush? There really is not. These were documents that we've been working on for a long time. They've been brought to the point of being able to show them in public, have the public take a look. That was part of our commitment, is that the public would get an opportunity to take a look at these documents before they went into effect, before they were approved. They are we thought the Park Commission is the most appropriate place to bring those. It's part of your mission to weigh in on, all things recreation. So we have it here tonight. We discussed in September our intent to take this to the Board of Supervisors in November. It's often difficult to have a meeting right before Thanksgiving, which would be our next regular meeting, and so your commission agreed that it would be a opportune time to bring these forward to the public and have the public take a look at them in October. So that's the reason for the special meeting. It was just an opportune time to bring these forward and have the public take a look at them. So that's what we're here for. So let me go through the items that we'll be talking about tonight. The first is each of our public recreation areas get named by the Board of Supervisors and added to our county public recreation ordinance so that they're covered under the rules and regulations of that ordinance. So that's the first item that we'll be bringing forward to the board. The second item is something that we have attached and done really on behalf of Public Works, who governs and manages the roads. But we're bringing forward a ordinance on their behalf to institute no parking regulations along Bell Road and Kramer Road, the public roads nearest the new entrance to Twilight Ride. Finally, we've been working with staff of the Placer Land Trust, who are here tonight, for a couple of years, ever since the approval, on a memorandum of understanding for how we will cooperate with one another and coordinate with one another once the public enters some of the property. The Taylor Ranch and Katamian property in blue are owned by the Placer Land Trust. So we have a memorandum of understanding between us, between the county and Placer Land Trust for how to manage together when it's open to the public. And then finally, there are two plans that the Planning Commission asked us and conditioned us to complete before the opening of the property. That's an emergency response plan and a vegetation and fuels management plan. So we have brought those forward as well. I did see some requests and emails coming through that these all be presented to the Planning Commission, to the MAC, to the Fire Safe Council, to other bodies. This is not a land use decision. That decision has been made. So this project did go through the Planning Commission. We have presented on this project to the MAC, many times. So we're not proposing that this go back through the Planning Commission as a land use decision. These are documents that need to be done. They are conditions of approval, but there's no requirement to go back through that entire process. So we're here tonight to roll these out and explain them and what they are and give the public an opportunity to take a look at them. So getting specific, I'd like to go through each of those documents. First is the proposed naming. And this is in conjunction with Placer Land Trust. We talked about appropriate names for quite a while. So we have Hidden Falls Regional Park, which is the name that we have today. The name that we're proposing for the blue area is the Big Hill Preserve. We also, you'll see in the memorandum of understanding, in the future would propose a name of the Bear River Backcountry for the area, if I back up, in green. That's a future thing. We don't know when that's coming. We're not planning for it yet. It's further off on the horizon, so we're not planning on naming it today. We're not planning on adding the green area to the public recreation ordinance until we get closer to that coming to reality. That's off into the future. We're focused then on the naming in the addition of the blue areas to the public recreation ordinance and the naming of Big Hill Preserve. Well, the strategy of that naming is that you've got Hidden Falls Regional Park, where the most intense trails are, the most density of trails, 30 miles within 1,200 acres, then goes into the Big Hill Preserve, which is going to be somewhat less dense. The Land Trust has asked that dogs not be allowed in there, at least in the beginning. It's a little more of a backcountry experience, and then as you get up into our future vision for the Bear River backcountry would be even more remote, and for that we anticipate a whole different level of reservations going in and out, like you would do backpacking into a national park, something like that. We're really controlling people because you really are getting out into 10, 15, 20-mile loop during a day and have to be back out, know what you're doing. We have to know where you're at. So that's all future, but I just wanted to explain the kind of the logic and the thought process behind this naming recommendation. So that is our recommendation today. It'd be the Big Hill Preserve. We would also attach to that the name of Hidden Falls Regional Park, kind of in subtext or supertext, if you will. So if you could picture the entry boulder that we have at Hidden Falls as Hidden Falls Regional Park, what we'd kind of envision as you go out to enter the Twilight parking lot area, that name will go away. It would say Big Hill Preserve in big letters, and then in kind of smaller text above, Hidden Falls Regional Park. So we want to keep the connection. We want people to understand that they are connected parks, but also have some of their own identity. So the Land Trust will be able to tell the story of the families and the naming and the things like that they've done before. We'll be able to kind of keep an identity around the Big Hill Preserve, but also let people know that they are connected. So that's our recommendation on naming. And then just by nature of adding it to the public recreation area, it would regulate the hours of operation. Now, it's not open at all yet. So we do have several sections. There is a section within the PRA that says it can remain closed by order of the enforcement official, who is our director, Josh Hunsinger, who's here, so we can use that to keep it closed until the day we actually do open it. We also have been posting out there on site right now a penal code section to keep people out of the construction zone. So we've got a couple of different ways, even though we're asking for it to be added to the ordinance today, to keep people out until we're actually ready for them. So I want people to know that. The public recreation ordinance also regulates dogs, motorized vehicles, discharge of firearms, protection of resources, requires people, the public, to stay on roads and trails that are already there, not cut their own. It prohibits camping. And by special naming, we can designate public recreation areas that prohibited in their entirety smoking and fire, open fire. This property would be added to that list where even smoking cigarettes prohibited. That's true of Hidden Falls today. We'd carry that into this property. No open fires, no campfires, no lighters, no nothing. So that's what that would do. We do say in the ordinance itself, the resolution, this regulates us. It does not necessarily regulate some of the activities of the Placer Land Trust. So they are able to do things with, say, docent-led tours, parties, things like that outside of regular public hours. They do retain some of the rights that they have on the property that would otherwise be excluded to the general public. When they do those activities, though, they're hosted and managed by the staff who are on site with them. So just want to be clear, we're not necessarily regulating the land trust or taking away any of the rights that they already have. The next thing we're bringing forward is do we have a slide in there on parking restrictions? Oops. We show parking restrictions. Oh, okay. We didn't depict it in here, but we are recommending that Bell Road, either side of the entry into the Twilight Ride parking area, have prohibited parking, no parking regulations at all times, for 1 mile each side. And Kramer Road, that the intersection of Bell and Kramer is just a couple hundred yards north of the entry to Twilight Ride. So those are the two public roads that we have the ability to regulate with no parking. It is not necessarily true that we would put signage out for the entire 1 mile. We want to have the authority to do that, to respond to parking violations, to problems. We needed that length of authority at the Mears parking lot back in 2016 when we had a severe overcrowding problem out there. Since 2018, when we instituted our reservation system, we have not needed any no parking signs. We've left some out there. Our expectation now is that we would put up some no parking signs kind of within the immediate vicinity of the entrance, but then reserve the rest of that area to address any problems that come up if it's needed. So we want to have the tool bag of regulation, but not necessarily a clutter of signs. I am confident. I think our reservation system works very well. We will be taking the reservation system to Twilight Ride on day one. Hidden Falls was open for several years before we started experiencing that overcrowding problem and had to respond to it. This will not be the case here on day one. We will have reservations required. We'll be doing that, at least in the beginning, 7 days a week until we figure out what the usage pattern is. As soon as we find out that there are normal days of the week and patterns that we wouldn't have to have reservations because it wouldn't fill up anyway, we may back that off. But in the beginning, until we really figure out what the use pattern is, we'll be instituting that reservation system from the very beginning. But we still, nonetheless, we want to have that tool in our bag for no parking if needed. And then that brings us next to the Memorandum of Understanding. So this is a document that we began working with Placer Land Trust staff on shortly after the approval of the project in 2021. We've had a lot of discussion over how to cooperate with one another, what rights need to be maintained, what compromises we need to make together. So this does represent a lot of work. I think we've met twice a month, almost continuously since 2021. We've walked the property together. We've talked through how things work, how we vision things. I think we've come to a pretty robust understanding of each other's expectations This document, and you have a copy of it. Oh, for anybody in the audience, by the way, we do have hard copies of the document, and the next two we're going to discuss right over there on the table, and you're welcome to get up at any time and get those if you want them. But the memorandum of understanding, we are asking for a recommendation from the commission to the Board of Supervisors to authorize the entry into this MOU. It is a formal agreement. The Placer Land Trust staff has moved this on to their board, and their board is prepared to sign or authorize the signature of this agreement in the way that it stands. So we talk about just some of the topics within here. Certainly, if you've perused it, opportunity for questions you may have if I don't cover them. But division of management responsibilities. So the Land Trust already does a lot of vegetation work. They do a lot of grazing in there. They will continue at about the same pace that they're already doing those activities. But as we bring the public into the property, we understand that it's our responsibility to manage the public both on the trails and on the mischief that people get in off the trails. So we would respond to social trails, to litter, to any of those kind of things that are really derived from the public. And we're committed to doing that through patrol, through staff, through rangers that patrol the property, that pick up trash, that respond to social trails, things like that. So that's basically how the division of management responsibilities falls, is that we are responsible for the public footprint on that property. The Land Trust, when these properties were purchased, including the what will become the Bear River Backcountry property, the Placer County put money into the purchase of many of these properties, not all of them, with the expectation of trail easements. At the time these properties were purchased, the Land Trust also entered into conservation easements that puts encumbrances on them for preservation of habitat, for limitation on new roads, for things like that. So you'll see in the very beginning of this document that both parties said this MOU is not intended to override those conservation values, those trail easement values, those things that we had already purchased and have within our body of responsibility by virtue of those purchase and sale agreements. So we do assert that neither one of us are giving up rights to enter into this. We're just cooperating. You will see, as we've talked quite a bit about naming already, and this just reflects what we just talked about. The naming convention within the park is also reiterated in the memorandum of understanding. We've talked about signage and guidelines, wayfinding signage, things like that, and who's going to be putting those in and so forth. Talked about trail standards. I think it's important, particularly to the Land Trust, that we have a meeting of the minds on what the trail standards are. 5 feet wide dirt trails. We're not building roads. We're not building anything like that. So we came to some detailed agreements in this on what the trail standards would look like. They have concerns about those creeping, getting bigger and things like that. So we're committed to the standards that we've talked about in here. Land Trust retains the right to continue grazing. We also, just as an aside, are just about to bring in cattle, all the work, the preliminary work to getting cattle in a big way back on Hidden Falls after a respite of about 10 years is just about to happen with Auburn Ravine ranchers. So we're excited to have those cattle coming back on as soon as the grass starts growing here very shortly. So we have our own grazer on Hidden Falls. Land Trust has their grazer on their property. That will continue as is. Vegetation management expectations. So and we'll see in the next document that we have a vegetation management plan. But the basic idea within this MOU is that the Land Trust continues. They have already done, like I said, grazing, but also shaded fuel breaks. They'll continue to maintain those at basically the same rate and pace and standard that they're doing today. And then we will come in and enhance that as we come into the property. You'll see in our next document that we're committed to building additional shaded fuel breaks. Things like that. We've worked with a forester to optimize where we should be doing those things. So we'll get to that in just a minute. Patrol and enforcement, we are committed to have ranger patrol out there. We're committed to have enforcement of illicit activity and illegal activity at an effective rate. We did talk about emergency and vehicle access. Again, I'll defer the detailed discussion of this because we're about to look at the plan for that in just a moment. It's this follow-up document. We did agree that it would be in both of our interests to have a robust volunteer program out there, but it'd probably be confusing to have two. So we've agreed in this MOU that to the extent we can, we would work together to develop a single volunteer program. With that much acreage and that much to be done, we've already been approached by some organizations that really have a great track record for coming on and doing patrol out there. Helping people that are lost, eyes and ears, reminders of the rules, those kind of things. So we're excited to bring on some of these volunteer patrols. We really need that because it's very expensive to do if you don't have volunteers. We did talk about management zones, that idea that we talked about in naming, that as you go kind of from Hidden Falls into the Big Hill Preserve and then onto the Bear River backcountry, that they are managed differently. They're managed as more remote areas as you move from southwest to northeast. We talk about those management zones. And then operational expectations that go along with those management zones was regulation of dogs and e-bikes. When things can be closed, the land trust wants to retain the right, if there is any kind of degradation to the values that they're responsible for, that they can cordon off and close parts of the park for restoration, things like that. No camping for us. The land trust does have they retain the right for camping if they want to do that. Again, that's managed with their staff. I don't know that they do it, but they didn't want to sign away that right. So they retain it, but we do not. We will not allow camping through our public recreation ordinance. Hours of operation, fishing and hunting are also discussed in there. Christy Clays is here with the land trust. I didn't know, Christy, you don't need to. I don't need to put you on the spot if you don't have anything to add, but I thought I would maybe turn to you right now, see if I missed anything you want to emphasize. Yeah, anything that I should cover? Any kind of statement on behalf of the land trust if you care to. If not, don't need to put you on the spot, sorry.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christy Clays. I'm the Recreation Manager for the Placer Land Trust. I've been working there about 4.5 years and have been working with Andy and Lisa and the other staff on this project that entire time. I'm the manager of the Big Hill Preserve, very familiar with all the properties. I know we've worked on this MOU for many years and have really spent a lot of time as the plan has changed and looking at it again and go, have we thought of everything? Let's revisit this, and what if that happens, and what if this happens? And from the land trust perspective, it was really important to us to make sure, above all, that it's a preserve and that we preserve the values there. So Andy mentioned that, and we believe all these things have really are holistically combined there, and they agree with each other. So just here to support the project and moving it forward, and we're excited to get it on the ground. Thanks.
Good, thank you.
Would it be, before I move on to the emergency plan and the vegetation management plan, would it be a good time? Are there any questions or anything? Pause for just a moment. I haven't taken a breath in a while.
I've got one housekeeping question. On our agenda, we have 3 items, and on that list that you had on the previous page, you had 4 items on there. And what's not on our agenda is the revised parking ordinance. I feel it's important, but are we allowed to make a motion towards that? Or are you expecting one, or is that handled through a different chain?
We didn't ask you to make a motion on the parking because simply because it really is kind of the realm of Public Works. It generally works through Public Works. They asked us to attach it to this group of motions going forward, and we were happy to do that. It saved them an independent trip to the board. But that was really our only thinking is we wouldn't ask you to weigh in on something that generally is in the domain of Public Works and kind of out of the ordinary for your commission.
Agree with that. And with it not being on the agenda, I feel awkward about entertaining motions on that. So, all right.
Yeah, and that's how we pictured it, that we'd give you a presentation, that we would listen to any feedback, but we would ultimately follow the format of Public Works, which is to take it directly to the board.
I'm glad that you are addressing parking in that area. Right. Any other questions or comments from the commission? Are you open to questions from the audience at this time?
I certainly am. I defer to you whether you want to, and maybe audience members.
I think it would be a good time
or do you want to take a break
at this point before we go on to the fuel and vegetative management portion. Any questions or comments? Yes, ma'am. And if you wouldn't mind coming up and letting us know who you are and what your concerns are and questions are. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Diane Dolly, and I live on Kramer Road Extension, which is the west side of Bell Road. It's private, it's 9 feet wide, paved. I'm concerned about I need signage there because it happens, people come driving up there. There is no turnaround. So if you come up there with a truck and trailer with a couple of horses in it, you're going to end up backing 3/10 of a mile all the way back to Bell Road. And I'm concerned it will happen because people don't always read the signs.
So
I would request that the county consider something for that.
are you looking at a sign that maybe says something to dead end road, no turnaround?
Yeah, that would be
Something like that?
helpful. Yeah, just so people don't come up through there because
Okay.
there's no way to turn
Yeah,
around.
no
It's-
public access?
No.
Is it a private driveway?
It basically is, yeah.
Okay.
It's a 20-foot wide private road,
Okay,
and it goes all the way up to the top, to the end, which is 3/10 of a mile.
all right.
And I know Andy and Lisa are familiar with it, and it's just, I'm concerned because it has happened.
Yeah.
And it's a little awkward for the people to back up that far.
All
So
right,
I just request that something be done for that.
all right. Andy is,
Lisa's talking about, because we have thought a lot about this, so let me
Okay.
turn it to Lisa because she knows the
all right.
details of what we do
Lisa,
have
do you
in
have
mind
some
here.
words of wisdom?
I do. So, hi, Diane. So
Hi.
Lisa Carnahan, Senior Planner. So we've talked about this before with you, and yeah, the plan is to have as we've talked about, since it's private, we can't sign the private portions of it, but we've talked about putting something on the corner
A
that
big
not
arrow.
only says, do not go down this way, don't go down Kramer, there's no entrance to Hidden Falls this way, and also put a directional signage portion that says Hidden Falls left.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
you're welcome.
Hope that helps.
We'll try to do
Thank
some mock-ups and, get detailed with you about what that'll look like as we get closer.
Another one suggested Oar Creek.
Sure, come on up to the mic, please, so we can hear.
Another suggestion was Oar Creek has kind of the same situation, that coming up, we call it the S curves, going up through there.
Okay,
At Oar Creek, that there should be some sign that says no Hidden Falls access or something.
Right, there's actually already one that says that there at Oar Creek Lane, no Hidden Falls access, but yeah, we'll be putting a similar sign to that one that says, keep
going.
going,
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
thank you, Lisa. All right. Any other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Bart Rude, Kramer Road. I'd like to first start with a couple of thoughts. One, Jane Wurst, who I think all of you know of. Jane's not here this evening, but she's certainly here with us in spirit. And the second thing I'd like to say is I'd like to acknowledge Andy because I understand he'll soon retire, and I recognize that he's put a good deal of work into this effort. And not that we've always agreed, but he's done his best to meet us halfway. And thank you, Andy,
Thank you.
and your staff. I do have a couple of other questions, though, and I don't know quite whether they'll pertain to exactly what we're addressing here with this memorandum of understanding, but a couple of things flew off the page for me. And one of the things that I read is that e-bikes will be restricted to Class 1 e-bikes. Well, they're Class 1, Class 2, Class 3 e-bikes. Who's going to monitor and who's going to check to see who's on a Class 2 or Class 3 with capability of going much, much faster? So I think it's ludicrous to kind of name things like that. If we just name e-bikes, why don't we just say e-bikes? And that includes 1, 2, and 3. People will not be happy about that, but we can't be all things to all people if we just say one thing. People show up with Class 3 bikes, almost guaranteed. So that's one of the concerns that I had, and that's noted somewhere, some specific page. I'm a little interested in how this was said, that it was not necessary to go to the Fire Council and to the max, because this wasn't a land use decision this evening. So that seemed like an end run to me, but that's my opinion. So here we are. And another thing or two that I would like to look at, And I'm not sure where I picked this up because there's a lot of reading, as you know, but I'm talking about water sources for fire suppression. And one of the things that I noted was that the water from a well on the Taylor Preserve would be one potential need or access for water. All right. And the same thing is said at the Twilight Light property, which will be renamed. There's going to be there is a well there, and there will be a 12,000 gallon tank. I'm concerned about all that pumping and that usage. What does it do to the aquifer? What does it do to the people who were there first and rely on that aquifer that serves that general area beneath the surface, obviously, for their water wells and so forth? So it's a concern. We've talked about it before, but I don't think it was adequately addressed. And so I am concerned about using those underground water resources for fire suppression. There are reservoirs around, and it would seem to me that would be a better and more exclusive use for that. So that's another thing. I'm glad to see that dogs will be prohibited. I don't know how that can be enforced because people will come up with their dogs and they'll turn those dogs off the leash and away they'll go. And it'll happen. And so will your enforcement people be able to chase them down? I don't think they will. Anyway, that's another one of my concerns. And of course, along with that, the cost of patrol and enforcement. And Andy points out that there will be volunteers, and I think those volunteers are not going to risk their lives to chase down somebody who is going too fast or running across the countryside rather than staying on the trails. They'll take care of their own safety. So there's a lot of things that, in my view, are somewhat ludicrous along with this. So nowhere do I read anything about enforcement other than we have security people and so forth. But what about the citations? What about the fines? I've never read anything about this. If we don't hit people right where it hurts in the pocketbook, they'll just laugh us off. And so that we all see that. We see it across the spectrum of society, whether it be in the emergency room at the local hospital, wherever it might be. If there isn't some kind of bulletproof assistance, if we will, to enforce these things, then people will do as they wish. That's what society has become. And, it goes back to the very beginning. The Twilight Ride property, about 50 acres there, was $1.2 million. That's $24,000 an acre. I do not know of any appraisal in any general area around that is more than around $14,000 an acre. And that land was secured by the county, almost, I guess, uncontested. So I go back to that in the very beginning. I'm still not happy about it. I thank you for your time and for the decisions that you have to make.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other questions? Andy or Lisa, do you want to address any of those concerns?
Yeah, I do. So let me start with fire storage. Very good question. The intent is not to use the well to fill up our fire storage tanks. We have a 10,000 gallon tank. It is filled by the NID surface water that we purchase for that property. And that's the primary goal, to fill it up. It does have a crossover with the ability to fill it up from the well. I can tell you that's not what we do at Hidden Falls today. We've actually taken water trucks from the hydrants within the DeWitt Center here, the Placer County Government Center, to fill those up. So we do try to avoid using well water. So what we plan on and what we do under normal circumstances is one thing. The other thing, you'll see in an emergency access plan, we want to put a point and a direction to everything that is available on the moment of the emergency. So if there is a well there that can be used, we want first responders to know that. Not our first choice, all things being equal, we have better plans than that. But in the time of emergency, you want to give them the most robust directions to everything they got to work with that they can get their hands on. So kind of two different things, what we're planning to do and what we want first responders to know is available if that's really what they need to because of the circumstances. So I think great question, but we do go to some efforts to not use groundwater, well water to fill up those tanks. We do it from other sources. Volunteers versus for enforcement. I think the comment was, are they going to risk their lives? Do they have as much at stake? Fair enough. So, and our general strategy is a tiered approach to enforcement. So volunteers can be out there in volume. They can be a lot of eyes, a lot of ears, a lot of witness, a lot of presence. They take care of most infractions. I mean, most people are not belligerent. Just by numbers, most people that are reminded of the rules are going to correct themselves. So that takes care of, 75, 80% of the problems you run into out there just by communication and education. So that's the first line. And then the volunteers, we do have, they have cell phones for areas that work. We also have Motorola communication that works in all areas, even when cell coverage doesn't. So they have access to our paid rangers, they have access to our staff, and they have access to first responders. So it's that tiered approach. We're not going to hire deputy sheriffs to go out there and remind people of their dog on leash when 80% can have a volunteer, remind them. But we do have that tiered approach to get a hold of first responders all the way up to criminal arrest if that's needed. Fortunately, it's not very often. But we have that kind of incident command structure in place to be able to respond all the way from routine every day up to issues that need a sheriff. And we have rapid communication with them. Fines, I did want to mention the last clause in our public recreation ordinance. We did tighten up a couple of years ago. It was a little cloudy on how we could issue infractions of the public recreation ordinance. And if I recall at the time, I think it might have required the DA to be involved, which, for fairly small things was a cumbersome thing. So we did tighten that up, and that does give us a lot more streamlined tool chest to be able to issue infractions that do have fines behind them and hit people in the pocketbook if we need to. Finally, I think I'll say e-bikes. That is a bigger issue we're going to be bringing before your commission and talking about more broadly as a policy within, probably the next year or so. What should e-bike policy look like, not just at Hidden Falls, but countywide?
Okay, thank you. Does commission, based on those comments that you've heard, have any comments or questions? Andy, do you want to go on to the third item?
Sure. So we're down to our last two items. Let's see. There we go. So these two documents, as I mentioned, they're sitting on the table there if you want to get a hard copy of them and read them. The first of those documents, the Vegetation and Fuels Management Plan. This one, like the next one, we are not recommending for formal approval, and that's consistent with the plan that we've had in place at Hidden Falls since 2007. That's consistent with management plans we have in open space, down through the Dry Creek, Roseville area, other places that we have open space, other areas that we work with private developers and things like that to share open space. The reason for that is they are intended to be adaptive. They're intended to be modified and adapted over time as conditions change. But we do want to have a document that when somebody comes and says, what is your plan for vegetation and fuels management? We can hand them to that and say, this is our plan that we abide by. The document we've had at Hidden Falls since 2007, it was prepared by a registered forester and the UC Farm Advisor office. I will say that we have met or exceeded every goal within that plan. Where it called for shaded fuel breaks, we have constructed all of them, and they are at least as big or wider than the plan calls for. We have a more robust grazing program at Hidden Falls than even the plan called for. Like I said, we're going to be bringing in cattle to do broad grazing throughout the entire property, but we also bring in goats every year for targeted, high-intense grazing of brush and grass in particularly high-risk areas around the parking lot, around trails, things like that. So if you've been out to Hidden Falls and you've seen the condition of Hidden Falls, I think we can say proudly, and Casey Lyons and his crew do a lot of that. Matt Williams also, our senior supervisors over here, really get that work done on the ground, and I want to shout out to them. They have done a tremendous job, and I think that is something that we have to be very proud of. So this plan takes the principles of that management that we've done at Hidden Falls, and it expands it onto the connectivity and the expansion parcels. I don't think we have a map of it, do we? So, and here are some of the things that we do talk about. So short-term recommendations, like as we are constructing and before we open the park, would be clearance around roadside. So we're taking the grass down, we're trimming up any kind of ladder fuels, limbing any branches, things like that. So we have intense clearing around roads, we have intense clearing around trails, defensible space around parking amenities. You'll see that even though it's not open to the public, if you go out to Twilight Ride today, you'll see that we've already started doing a really thorough job of eating down the grass and keeping that down. Also around Mears Road, very intense veg management around our parking lots. Maintenance of existing shaded fuel breaks, and then you'll see within the plan that we have prioritized the expansion of shaded fuel breaks beyond what the land trust has already done. To do that, we worked with the Resource Conservation District, and they have a registered forester and a whole team of forestry experts that work underneath them that make recommendations for where the most advantageous places are to stop a fire. It's really the goal of a shaded fuel break is to be able to stop a fire before it becomes a conflagration. It's a place that you can stage equipment. It's a place you can drop borate, those kind of things. And so these foresters know where to put that for the best chance of stopping a fire. They also know what, strategic areas to leave fairly thick for the purpose of habitat for quail and things like that. They've written those kind of things into this plan and discussed that balance between fire risk reduction and habitat retention and things like that. So we've got some very skilled foresters working on this plan. Very pleased with the results that they have that they've turned out. I do want to say too that this terrain, while we take vegetation management very seriously, we're also, a lot of this property has been well grazed for a long time. Not the least of which, Mr. Rood mentioned Jane Wurst. Her and unfortunately her late husband did a really fine job of grazing some of our properties, the Roar 140, some of the Twilight Ride property. So when we got this property, when we walk onto this property, there already been a history of very effective grazing. And so most of this property, particularly close to Twilight Ride, the Taylor property, looks more like your classic oak woodland than your overgrown thicket. Which when we've walked the property with CAL FIRE, they've been out and looked at this plan, and I think they were not able to be here tonight, but they have been, they have looked at this plan and approved it. They're very optimistic about the ability to stop fire on this property. While it is, like I say, we take it super seriously, anything to do with fire on any of our properties, but it is a much easier situation here than, say, Forest Hill, Colfax, areas up country with thick conifers and steeper slopes and things like that. So there is an advantage to this property. And we want to continue that effective fuels management on these properties. Lisa, anything that I missed on veg management plan?
Nope, I think you covered it all very well.
And finally, the emergency access plan, the emergency response plan. Did this one? This one does have it. Good. This one has a map. When we were in the middle of the approval process for the Hidden Falls project, there was a lot of discussion about emergency access. How do you get people in and out? How would you evacuate people? There was a request that we produce an evacuation plan, which we'd have happily done, but as we brought CAL FIRE into this and the sheriff into this discussion about effective emergency response for this property, their answer to us is that you can't do a evacuation plan per se because you don't know how a fire or an emergency event is going to start. You don't know where it's going to start. You don't know what direction it's going to go. So the best that we can do is produce a plan that does, like I say, outline every tool that they have to work with. every road within this property and the type of vehicle that it will support, all the way from the full water tender size down to this one has to be accessed only through the light rescue vehicle that we are in the middle of purchasing. One of the mitigations for this project before it opens is to purchase and deliver a light rescue vehicle, which is a kind of a dually 1-ton chassis size vehicle that can go on in smaller areas than full fire apparatus. It carries water for initial attack, and it's also able to do medical evacuation. So we are providing that as a mitigation to this project. CAL FIRE, Placer Fire will be able to use it in other places but this project, but it will be at this Atwood Station. It's going to be available to this project. So back to the roads, we're mapping here for those first responders where they can get their full fire apparatus, where the smaller vehicles, and then some of the areas that can only be gotten to on a quad or a side-by-side. We are installing, we're continuing the installation of helicopter landing pads. We have 3 of them at Hidden Falls today, 3 or 4. Be installing, we have installed one more at Twilight Ride. There'll be additional ones going in the area we're going to open now, and then additional ones up at, if and when we get to the Bear River backcountry, additional helicopter landing spots up there. It includes the water tanks that we have, both at the Mears Twilight entrance. We have 10,000 gallon water tanks for fire suppression. We have hydrants there. What are some of the other features that I'm not thinking of? Already put you on the spot.
I think were you going to talk about the errata here as well?
I
So
do.
just
I
a-
want to
just
talk
a-
about the errata. I want to make sure that the main features I've covered
Of
here.
the water, so you've got the 12,000 gallon water tanks, you have the wells, you have NID, you have the helicopter landing zones.
We provide Knox locks at different gates. So we do, a lot of this property go through private property to get to it, where the public will never be invited, but we do want to map all of that for first responders, because again, in an emergency, a whole different situation than the public. You want first responders to get there as quick as possible. So we're mapping all that. We work with them to put Knox locks on, which is a lockbox with that's keyed to a key particular to this agency right here, Placer Fire. We put those where they want them so they can get through gates quickly. And then I did want to mention, if you got an earlier version of this plan that came out, we caught an error we wanted to correct very quickly. Resource Conservation District did the mapping on this, and they had some older base mapping. They weren't here during the approval process. But an older version had an outline of a gray area within the Auburn Valley subdivision going up into the Bear River backcountry that by the legend showed that to be a construction area. That was an old artifact. We are not approved, nor do we want to put a parking area up here. So when we saw that on the old base mapping, we got it corrected as quick as we can. Wanted everybody to know we're not trying to make any, that was a pure error. We are not going back and changing our project. We have no desire to put a parking area or road up here. That was just an error. So we did get that corrected. We got that recirculated. The one that'll go to the board will have that eliminated as well. So just wanted to point that error out. Also a note on the bottom, did denote that we're still kind of looking over the fine points of where the roads reside, the existing roads and the planned ones within, particularly this area up here. The Land Trust wanted to put a caveat note at the bottom that now says some of these are schematic. We're not going to swear to the exact location, still kind of refining some of these roads up, particularly in the Bear River backcountry area. I think that's, unless you can think of anything else, I think I'm ready to stop finally and turn it back to your commission for any questions. Happy to go back through the slides if any of those graphics are helpful, but I'll turn that back to the chair.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Andy. Do we have any questions from the commission on the vegetation and fuel management plan or the emergency response plan? Those are two that are being handled together. Andy, the only question I have, and maybe this is a Lisa question, is you have the water tank available and you have PCWA available. How much water does the fire department, can they get per minute off of those sources? You have hydrants out? And what size are the hydrants? And I'm just thinking of,
Yeah, we have a
When they're
hydrant
fighting
on,
fires.
at Twilight Ride, and it's a 4-inch,
okay,
4-inch line.
all right.
It's whatever the fire department told us they wanted.
Yeah, that's 200 gallons a minute. They can fill up a truck.
Yeah.
So, all right. That was the only question I have. At this time, I'd like to open it up to the community. Is there anybody in the audience that has any questions? Yes, sir. Come on up. You bet.
I just have a couple of comments. One question, I'm Bart Rood, Kramer Road. One concern that I have, and while the Harvgo Preserve is not theoretically open yet, I've never seen anything addressed about people coming in from Nevada County on the north side. They can wade across the river, and they already do. And they laugh about it because they just say, ha ha, they can't keep us out of there. So that's just a comment that I'll make. And they will come in from that side, and I think they probably already are. Just like there's already a lot of trespass that goes on. The other thought that I have is the Vegetation and Fuels Management Plan is a good plan. I've read through it line by line, looked at the maps and so forth, and I found one spot that I just have to make a comment. And it's on page 31. And it has to do with pest management, and they talk about bark beetle infestation, specifically the Ips species, as being a real problem. I'm amazed that they didn't talk about the western pine beetle, Dendroctonus brevicomus. That's even a worse pest for the pine species, for ponderosa pine. That's just an oversight, I'm sure, but I couldn't let that go. Thank you.
Thank you. Good comment. Good catch.
I will just mention, a good comment, we'll follow up on that. We do have a pretty interesting stand of ponderosas on Hidden Falls, and the Department of Fish and Wildlife has taken up an interest in it. They're doing some additional surveys on top of this because of their ability to thrive in low elevations. So they're looking at those pines, they're looking at the genetics of the cones and the things like that already, so.
Did I hear you, Andy, say that they'll collect cones and preserve that genetic?
They are, yes.
Good, thank you.
All right. Yeah. Oh, please come on up.
Partly to do with your emergency response plan. I'm Delana Rood, Kramer Road. My understanding is that in terms of doing this emergency response plan, I guess the sheriff's department, Hoover, couldn't really talk too much because they didn't know where the problem was and they didn't know what the problem was. I do know that CAL FIRE and all those people are working on a plan, because when the fire was across Highway 49 from the hospital, about 10 years ago? I think it was called the 49er fire. They sent traffic down Kramer Road. Now you can imagine traffic that would be coming from Grass Valley. I think it was a Sunday, is my recollection. It was bumper to bumper. So if there's a huge emergency, let's say we have a big fire start at the Bear River along the Harvgo property, we have a north wind. If you can only imagine trying to get God only knows how many cars, how many pickup trucks pulling horse trailers out Kramer Road, Bell Road, Lone Star Road, it's going to create a nightmare. And I have kept an eye on Bell Road, Kramer Road, Lone Star Road the entire time that this planning has been going on. And I have, every meeting possible, been asking for signage, particularly on blind curves. Kramer Road has 4 terrible blind curves. There is no new signage on any of those. When they were bringing those big gravel trucks in, over the summer, I came within, I would say, about 10 seconds of being hit head on by one of those huge gravel trucks. So there has got to be better signage on these blind curves. The other thing is, and I've brought it up before, How many of you know that in the last 15 months, there have been 2 fatal accidents on Bell Road? Anybody? Anybody? You know that? You didn't know that? You didn't know that? You didn't know that? Okay. A woman was killed in a single-car accident on Bell Road, the long stretch down below Hubbard Road. The road does a sharp curve, blind curve. You have to make a stop. There's a stop sign. You go across Dry Creek. She came roaring down the hill, going too fast. I have the article right here. She didn't make the curve. Her car flew all the way across the creek. Had to go 50, 60 feet across the creek. She hit an oak tree, her car turned over, and it killed her. In March, a guy on a motorcycle, same thing, came roaring down the hill from what we call Four Corners. Jurger Road crosses Bell Road, down that long hill. There's a big swooping curve right before Burt Lane. He drifted off the side of the road, killed himself. There is no signage from the Four Corners forever. It doesn't say slow down, curve ahead. It says nothing. You need to do something about better signage. I know there have been a few signs put up on Bell Road, but you've totally ignored Kramer Road. And these 2 long swooping, well, one very sharp blind curve and the one swooping blind curve on Bell Road have been totally ignored. I drive that road a lot. 40-mile-an-hour speed limit from DeWitt to Hubbard Road, 35-mile-an-hour speed limit from Hubbard Road all the way around. I get passed on a regular basis on the straight stretches because I'm not going fast enough. This summer, there have been 3 deer killed in between Kramer Road and Four Corners. Right now, we have rutting season going on, and boy, watch out. We also have a lot of little animals killed. Skunks, possums, raccoons, quail, and wild turkeys. The people who drive these roads need some serious education about why we have 35-mile-an-hour speed limit on this stretch of road. If a deer goes through your windshield, good luck. Thank you.
Thanks, Delana.
Thank you.
I'll just, it does bring up, we didn't address it tonight because it's something we're still working on, but one of our conditions and mitigations is to work with Public Works on the pavement markings, the signs and stripings along Kramer Road. So that's something we're still working on before we open.
Okay.
Not something we had tonight, but still one of our conditions, so we haven't
right.
forgotten about it.
All right, at this time, I'm going to close comments. Thank you, Andy. If the commission would turn to item 8B, I would like to entertain 3 different motions on those 3 different items so that we can discuss each one separately if we need to. But in order for discussion to happen, we ought to make a motion and then discuss the motion. We'll just do one.
Yeah, we
didn't do A yet.
Oh, we didn't do A? Yeah, okay. Let's start with A.
we did.
All right.
Yeah, we approved A.
Yeah, we voted. Do you remember voting? Now, they say the first thing to go is your mind, right? Okay. Don't get old. All right, on the Hidden Falls, item I, or 1? Yeah. We have a motion?
I'll move that we recommend the County Board of Supervisors adopt a resolution approving the naming of the Big Hill Preserve, Hidden Falls Regional Park, and its addition to the Placer County Public Recreation Areas.
Okay. Been moved and seconded to make a recommendation to the County Board of Supervisors to adopt a resolution approving the naming of the Big Hill Preserve at Hidden Falls Regional Park and its addition to the Placer County Public Recreation Area. May we do a roll call vote, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Yeah, these are two. We'll do the
Item number 3, an action item?
Item 3, it does not need to be voted on. It was just
Okay.
the item to receive the presentation on the two documents. Yeah.
Okay. On item number 2?
Item 2, and it is up on the screen as well for you.
Okay.
Okay, I make a motion. The County Board of Supervisors execute a memorandum. Am I on? Memorandum of understanding with the Placer Land Trust for the operation and maintenance of the Hidden Falls Regional Park Trails Expansion Area.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to recommend to the County Board of Supervisors to execute a memorandum of understanding with the Placer Land Trust for the operation and management of Hidden Falls Regional Park Trails Expansion Area. Would you take a roll call vote, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. The third item was to receive a presentation on the vegetative fuel and management plan. We have done that, so we're going to close this section and move on to Commissioner, item 9, Commissioner comments.
Yes, if, if this is perhaps Andy's last official, if we're not having a November meeting, I would certainly like to recognize and commend Andy for his many years of service and leadership to the Parks Department, and particularly for the leadership and care he's given to us as commissioners. The amount of information and understanding and the breadth of his knowledge of what goes into these parks and the open spaces is absolutely remarkable, and I cherish that relationship and what he's given to the county and to each of us. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
With that, and just to say thank you for welcoming me onto the commission and being so helpful with information and kind of navigating it in the beginning. So, and good luck to you in your next chapter.
Thank you very much.
Andy, I'd like to thank you for working with our community. From the Grand Bay area, and back in the early 90s, he worked with us to develop a community park, which was a couple of big ball diamonds and a big wetland, and part of the old trail that used to go from Sacramento to Auburn ran through there. It's now part of the parking lot, I think, but Feist Park and working with our trails and just working with the community. Working with our community and developing a measure that would help fund the maintenance. And a lot of that is important because the county doesn't have enough money to do everything that we want it to do. So thank you for working with our community. And thank you for working with Placer County as a
Great
whole.
days, great people, great memories. Thank you.
Just a lot of terrific work up in the Tahoe area and work down here. I mean, you haven't left any place untouched. Thank you.
I don't think anybody could have said it better than Dave, but thank you for everything you've done, Andy.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
And same here. So I haven't been on the commission very long, much less than here. You made a very complex issues and project and stuff for the commission here easy to understand because there's so much going on. And when you read these packets, it's pretty overwhelming, you know, and I certainly don't understand every bit of it, but I understand enough to make decisions for the supervisors and to help with this commission. to do what we're supposed to.
Thank
So
you.
thanks for
Thank
that.
you for jumping right in and becoming such an integral member of the commission. I will dearly miss all of you. Certainly, I am not retiring because of the people. I love you guys. It is such a great team of people. Burge, you bring up wonderful memories. Work days, Ron Feist. I remember when we built Feist Park, Ron Feist and I had a motto of how to get it done. He was a superintendent of the school and a very, very well-known one, and we had to get this park done, and we didn't have much money to build it. And there was a 3-part decision-making matrix, we would say. Is it the right thing to do? Is it for the kids? And is it legal? And 2 out of 3 ain't bad. That's how we got the park built, so. Statute of limitations has run out, so I'll tell that story now, but
Yeah,
thank you all very much.
I think I remember Ron saying that, so. All right. I don't know who I need to talk to next, but it's either Lisa or Dan.
Sorry, I'd just like to.
Like I say, I don't know who I need to talk to now. I know Andy's not going to be here, but I would like to calendar maybe the first 2 meetings in 2025. Gosh,
So I think you could turn right to Tracy right there and look at things. You're right, you are right, when we did talk about having a meeting in October. We still have not had any items that need to come forward in November, so I think we're clear to look at a next meeting in January and then in March.
I think so. Can we pull out our calendars and look at January real quick? I think we're normally on the 16th. I know it's a long way out, but currently, does that look okay? All right. And then let's go 2 more months and just get two on the calendar. Next one would be the 20th of March. All right. And then we'll fit the other ones in when we fit the other ones in. All right. March 20th. All right. And again, Andy, thank you for your service, and this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Oh, excuse me. It's been brought to my attention. I'm back in service again. Just a minute. I don't have this chairman thing down. Andy, come on. Have a unique. You serve a lot of. You serve these folks. Serve these folks. Serve those. Folks, serve the outside. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And,
These guys, thank you really good, all of them. I used to sit behind a desk. Nothing to be done at the field.
Well, it's interesting. I've seen a lot of park districts in my time, and you can look at the staff and know what the management is. There are some places that people like to go to work. There's other places that people are ready to work. And you have a staff that here's the life. Thank you. All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Now you're gonna bang.
Now we're adjourned.
All right.